right, good morning. This is Valkyrie Homestead. I am Brian. This is my wife, Justine. And in this video,
we're going to talk about the 10 things that homesteaders don't talk enough about on YouTube or elsewhere in social media.
Yeah, so hopefully some of these tips are good, you enjoy them. If you have any questions or anything, leave them in the comments below and we'll try to get them answered there. So enjoy the list. Wood chips don't grow on trees, or do they? Wood chips can be, these aren't wood chips, but wood chips can be an invaluable commodity on the homestead. You can use them for deep bedding if you have a stationary pen for your chickens or your pigs. You can set it up where you keep adding layers and layers of wood chips, and with all of the poop and pee from the chickens or the pigs, at the end of the season, when you go to remove all that stuff, it can make some really, really great compost. Now, with that said, wood chips can be hard to come by. If you don't have a wood chipper on your own, when we were in Alabama, we used a service called Chip Drop, which basically you sign up online. It tells local arborists that they can drop their wood chips off at your property, and you get basically free wood chips by the truckload. So it's usually several cubic yards of wood chips at a time. When we were in Alabama, I signed up for it, and within hours, every time we had a pile of wood chips delivered. Now we've been out here in North Carolina for a year and a half. We've been signed up with Chip Drop the entire time, and we've got nothing. Yeah, along with that deep bedding, the other thing you can use wood chips for is dumping them in the rows in your garden, between your garden beds. It makes a good, soft spot to walk in between your garden beds. And then as they kind of decompose, you can then shovel them into the actual garden beds and replace the wood chips. You can use them in the orchard and skirt them around trees to keep pesky grasses from growing. There are a ton of different uses for wood chips on the homestead. Yeah, so now that we've been in North Carolina for a year and a half, we've been signed up for Chip Drop for the entire time, and we have had zero luck getting any wood chips delivered. 10 months ago, we had Hurricane Helene come through, and there have been down trees everywhere. There's still down trees everywhere, and still no wood chips. Until right before I wanted to make this video and had this idea for this video, I got an email saying that Chip Drop wants to deliver a bunch of wood chips. And we got a delivery, and I was overjoyed. So we now have this delivery of wood chips, but the thing I have to keep in mind is I may not want to do a deep bedding method with pigs or chickens, because I don't know if we're ever going to get more wood chips from Chip Drop. I've had friends in the area who have been signed up for 5+ years, and I got a single delivery. I did talk to the guys from this particular tree cutting service, and I told them anytime they want to, they can deliver wood chips to this property. So we'll see how regular these deliveries are. This looks like a lot of wood chips, but we don't know how far they're gonna go. I'll probably try to put a bunch of them into the orchard, but you just have to kind of be mindful of they're not always going to be readily available. All right, so topic number 2 is the electric netting. And all these YouTubers show you these pretty chicken pens or pig pens, and everything looks great. And these nettings, they work, don't get me wrong, they work, but they are annoying in a couple different areas. One is, once the net's set up, this is for our egg layers, how do you get in this thing? For me, I'm not super flexible, but when I get in, there's times when my legs get kind of caught up in the net, and then, or you get caught kind of through here. And that can be problematic. I have fallen over, getting caught up in here. It's never fun. Luckily, I've always usually fell outside of the fence, so I'm not falling into like chicken poop or whatnot. But these fences can be country. They do sell a little gate, but that's again more money you have to spend just for some convenience. So when you got your fence set up, the other thing you got to keep in mind is your energizer. Like, how are you going to make sure that this thing stays electrified? They do sell these solar energizers, and they work pretty well, but you have to make sure that they kind of are keeping the sun in their sights. So another tip for this fence is, once you get it all wrapped up, you know, put it away. Don't just leave it out in the field. I have an example here. I'm gonna say I left this for you guys, but actually I was just being lazy. Thought I'd use it sooner than I did, but you can see this is one of my fences, and it is now growing into all of the grass, which will be a pain for me to pull it out. It's also a risk for me to run it over with the lawnmower. Luckily, I haven't done that with this one yet, but I have gotten them caught up in my tractor, and it kind of rips some of the strands apart. So this is where some of our pigs used to be, and I switched from the electric netting to the 2-wire fence, and that was because getting this electric netting through the woods was a real chore. All the different strands get caught up on all the different branches and trees and bushes and all that stuff, and so this is way easier to get through the woods. So if you're going into the woods, you may train your animals to like a 2-wire system, and these work really good out here in the pasture. Now I'm going to gather this up, and I'll give you some tips on kind of how to gather it up. Now you can see how much gets caught up in these. So one thing I found that works best is when I'm detaching the fence and pulling it down, I try to lay it all down the same direction. That way all the points are facing one way, all the tops are facing one way, and you end up not getting things all twisted around. When you're pulling them out of your pen, you have to kind of decide whether you want to go into all of the greenery, which could be poison oak or it could be grass, or putting it right directly into the pig poop. So that's kind of a pick your poison. And I went more towards the inside of the pen when I did this, as opposed to putting in the poison oak, but there is some growing up. What I find too is with this longer strand in between posts, I like to grab every other post. Now, if you're shorter, that may not work for you, but I can usually hold it just high enough or drag it along where that works. So I'm gonna see if I can get that through the woods, and I'll see if we can gather it up. All right, I got this one out, but yeah, I don't know if you can see how many like sticks are caught up into it. So it was definitely a chore to kind of get it through the woods. I'm gonna pull out this other one, and I'll show you how I kind of roll them up. Yeah. All right, I got this one done. And again, see, it caught this little stump here, and it's tangled everything all up. Come on. It caught my mic and ripped that out while I was doing it. So, all right, so the end that I had gathered up, what while I was picking them up is usually the neater end, and so I'll kind of start there, and what I do is I just roll this netting up, kind of trying to keep it into a tight, organized bunch. And along the way, try to pull out any sticks that get kind of caught up in there. And then once I get to the end, all right, so once I get, I don't know if you can see me down over here, but once I get it to the end, I'll take one of the strings. They come with the strings to tie them up, and I use them to not only attach the fence to itself, but I use them to tie up my bundle. And then this is now ready for me to go put in my storage area. And I do recommend having one spot dedicated where you can store rolls of fencing. All right, tip number 3, now that plane has flown over, we're gonna talk about planning your day and starting early. It's kind of a myth you have to wake up before the sun rises to tend to all your animals. But what I will say is in the summertime, as you can see right now, it's early in the morning and already pretty toasty. Getting your chores done early is beneficial. I think that not only does it help you not get super exhausted early in the day, but it also gives your animals a chance to eat while it's not, 100 degrees out. This July has been super crazy, and it's been, in the mid 90s the entire time. I think it's the hottest July we've had in years. So starting early is definitely beneficial.
Yeah, you will never look at the weather app as much as you will start doing so once you have a small farm. Checking on the sunrise, sunset, temperatures throughout the day. And conversely, like opposite of summer, in the winter, depending on where you live, going out to check on their water frequently to make sure it's not frozen solid, it can be a really common occurrence as well. So yeah, planning your day.
Kind of around the weather and around the time of year, really helps out.
All right, the number 4 thing I think not a lot of homesteaders talk about is annual planning. You are planning multiple seasons ahead for your year. We actually now have an annual calendar that we have in our kitchen, and it's usually at December, January, end of year, beginning of the year, where we look at the entire year ahead. And it's really helpful to have some logistical planning, because you want to plot out the dates of when your first meat birds arrive, when our new egg layers arriving, when's the processing day, when's your first frost date, your last frost date, when are you going to be planting XYZ and harvesting XYZ. So there is a bit of logistical planning that goes into all of this. Having a small farm definitely requires lots of planning, and I cannot recommend enough starting to do annual planning, looking at the entire year ahead so you can plan all of that out. Another element of these logistics, your brooders, your chicken tractors. You don't want to double book those items, and or if you need more fencing, right, because of all the animals you're taking on. So annual planning definitely becomes real when you have a small farm.
All right, the number 5 thing that other homesteaders on YouTube won't tell you is, if you decide to raise animals on your farm, you are more than likely going to have to deal with death in some way or another. Whether it's raising like these turkeys, in another 2 months, maybe 2.5 months, we will plan a day and we will butcher all of these turkeys. Butcher day is kind of filled with mixed emotions. You know, it's never a happy day when you take the lives of 20 or so birds, but you also get this kind of sense of it's a hard day's work, and so you kind of feel good after accomplishing a lot in a day. And it also feels good to know that your freezers are stocked, and you know that these birds will have provided food for your entire year, kind of over the next season. So it's kind of a weird mixture of you know, sadness and also, you know, feeling proud of the work you've done that day. Now, outside of the planned death on your farm, other animals will die as well. On our farm here, we've had a fox get into our egg laying coop and pretty much decimate that. And walking out and seeing feathers and bits and pieces, that hits a little bit harder than these animals. We raise these animals to have a good life and to, you know, provide for us, but you know, we want the best life for them as well. And when that when you know, nature happens, it really sucks. It is a bit of a learning moment where you can, you know, look at your defenses on the farm and see if there's any place you can improve. Some things are unavoidable. We've had a mama pig who had 8 piglets, and over the course of a week she rolled over onto 5 of them. And you know, kind of the solution to that problem was we ended up putting her in a freezer, and we're not going to deal with that bad of a mom. And that's 2 different sides of death. One we kind of planned, the other one, like, she just, you know, wasn't that great of a mom, wasn't situationally aware, and kept crushing her babies. And that can be kind of hard, you know, over and over and over again. I've had, you know, baby chicks get, you know, pretty critically injured, and I've had to put them down. So just know that if you're going to be raising animals, one of my friends says, if you're like raising livestock, you're also managing dead stock too. So you know, there will be death on the farm, and you will have to kind of figure all that out. And that's kind of the you know, the less fun side of homesteading. But you know, when you do go into the pantry and you open your freezers and there's just a, you know, a freezer full of pork or turkey. We love ground turkey, so we have a ton of ground turkey, or chickens, and you don't have to go to a store for that. It's a really rewarding feeling. So yeah, that's death on the homestead. All right, so the number 6 thing is, I'm hoping you can see me. It's kind of dark under this this pig stall. Number 6 thing is you'll most likely burn out. So if you come kind of like us, if you came from a non-farming background, you know, getting introduced to all this stuff is super exciting at first. You want to get all the animals, you want to get all the infrastructure, and it eventually can kind of catch up to you and be burnt out. What I talked about in the last segment about managing death on the farm, that too, if it kind of all hits you in one week, which it usually does, can kind of make you start questioning, like, what am I doing here? You know, am I raising these animals right, and all that kind of stuff. And what I'll say about burnout is just making sure that if you start to feel burned out and you're just not loving the process, is until you kind of figure out why you're not loving the process, is try to get something small done every single day. Just a little bit, you know, a little step in the right direction in your long-term goals, and that can kind of help you not feel like you're not doing anything on the farm, but then also you know, not overload you. And it's happened. I mean, we've been homesteading for I think 4 or 5 years now. And you know, when we first started, I was working a full-time job, so was my wife. And you know, it was hard to get everything done, but you know, we were new to it, so we didn't have that many animals or that big of a garden. And now that we're doing it kind of, you know, more or less full time, you know, the projects are never ending. The planning's never ending. And so you can kind of just get in this like rut of, you know, kind of just keep doing the same thing day in and day out. The other thing I'll say about homesteading is it can be kind of a solitary endeavor. You know, it's me and my wife doing this farm. We don't have any kids yet. We have one on the way, but he probably won't be too helpful for a little while. But you're not like hanging out with friends every day of the week or every weekend. You know, there's a lot of projects and stuff that you just are kind of tied to the farm with. And, you know, and so making times to be social with people and, you know, maybe hit up a homesteading event and, you know, really trying to like reconnect that way. A lot of times if we go to a homesteading event or we go to a tour a friend's farm or even a farm just in town that has tours, you'll see some of their implementations of different aspects of the farm, and it'll kind of reinvigorate you to try some new stuff or change stuff a little bit on your farm and your processes. Ultimately, if we get like too kind of burnt out, one thing we always kind of fall back on is just good old pen and paper planning. You know, head inside for a few days, kind of look at like, you know, 1 year, 5 year, 10-year plans, and really go from there and see if there's, you know, some ways you can kind of simplify some things and you know, kind of just rehone your process. But you know, burnout happens. It's not the end of the world. You know, again, just kind of accomplishing a little bit every day, and you know, kind of, you know, reigniting that spark really helps. So that's whatever number this was.
Wait, what number is this?
7.
7. Okay, thank you. All right, if you've been watching a lot of homestead videos on YouTube by now, you've probably seen a lot of people canning and pickling and fermenting, flash freezing, doing all these fun things with everything they harvest in the garden, in addition to, of course, storing and cooking all of the meat that they raise. So number 7 thing that I think not a lot of folks talk about is actually being comfortable in the kitchen and getting all of that done. You know, do you know how to can? Do you have canning materials and you know how to use all that equipment? Do you know how to pickle or ferment? I don't. So this is definitely a growth edge for me personally. I started living on my own when I was 17 years old. I was also vegetarian, and I lived off of frozen meals for years. Only things I knew how to cook were basically brown rice and stir frying or steaming vegetables. That was kind of it. Otherwise, frozen meals, mac and cheese, pizza, pretty typical young adult living on their own kind of stuff. So this is definitely a learning curve for me. You know, if you grow a ton of tomatoes, yeah, you got to do something with them. You got to can them, you got to freeze them, turn it into pasta sauce, turn it into salsas, know how to preserve that stuff. So it is a lot of work. It's something I'm continually working on getting more comfortable with, learning how to use equipment in the kitchen. So definitely something to know. If you're gonna get into gardening, raising meat, all of that, definitely got to get comfortable in the kitchen. Number 8 thing I think not a lot of folks talk about is animals get sick, and you don't always have access to a veterinarian when it comes to a big pig or your goat or whatever the animal is. So I actually worked in the veterinary field for years. I was not actually a vet tech or anything, but after almost a decade working in that field, I did learn a lot. And I feel very lucky that there are a lot of commonalities in the ailments you see, like in a pig versus dog. There's a lot of similarities, actually. So one of the first experiences we had was one of our first Kuni girls getting, like, it seemed like maybe an eye infection or something. So that was something that I was able to kind of figure out, go to Tractor Supply, get the necessary treatment things. I think we tried colloidal silver. I did warm compresses, which is always a good idea. And then I got some sort of antibiotic ointment at Tractor Supply. So that was like, I leaned very heavily on my veterinary experience in that situation. More recently, Opal, while she was pregnant, I think it was the end of last year, right?
Yeah.
She was sick, and Brian over here is really, really great about leaning on community, and you reached out to a handful.
Yeah, so we have a couple friends who are, you know, kind of in the homesteading realm, and reach out to them and kind of ask, like, hey, have they ever seen, you know, this list of symptoms she had, and kind of everything we had already tried. You know, it was like activated charcoal. There was a couple other, like, you know, dietary things, like try not to sober feed or all that kind of stuff. She was basically really lethargic, wasn't getting up for food, which for a pig is not normal. And so then I ended up reaching out to the breeder we got them from, and she was great. She gave us a couple more options to look into, and kind of said, you know, if there was, I did have to sacrifice my personal thermometer to insert it into her, and so you know, she gave us a couple other things to look for. You know, if she's lethargic, not eating, if it gets better in a couple days but she's not running a temperature, you know, there's those things. And then kind of the last resource that we've used is just reading books. There's a ton of good books on different animals and things to watch out for, and, you know, likely ailments and stuff like that. So you do have to do kind of a lot of your own research, and you know, kind of self-healing and stuff like that when you have animals on the farm.
All right, number 9 thing not a lot of homesteaders talk about on YouTube. It's a big one, in my opinion. This is not the simple life. I think a lot of folks, when they think of having a small farm or homestead, they think, oh, yes. They think, oh, yes, the simple life. That seems so idyllic and just so peaceful and whatever. Honestly, this is not the simple life. It is anything but. It is more complex. I would say when we both had full-time jobs and lived in the Bay Area in California, that was actually the simple life looking back. Because what is it? You wake up, eat breakfast, you feed your kids or your dogs or whatever, you go to work, your life revolves around your job. And then you are a weekend warrior or whatever, right? Spend time with your friends. But yeah, it's pretty simple. When you transition to a lifestyle like this, right, we've talked about the annual seasonal planning, the daily planning, dealing with life. There's so many more complexities. Of course, the trade-off is we now have no one to answer to but ourselves. So that's the trade-off, right?
Yeah. And it's, you know, we're now our own bosses. Kind of all the animals we're responsible for. The other, like, odd transition that we had to deal with is getting used to being around each other for 24 hours a day. You know, I was gone at work for 12 hours basically every day with commute in there. She worked from home, but, you know, it was definitely an interesting transition in the beginning. We were still figuring it out, but like, lots of hard work, lots of learnings. You know, I don't think we quite did enough research on starting our own businesses before we jumped into you know, basically quitting our jobs and whatnot. But So a lot of trial by fire, but we're figuring it out. And honestly, like I'm loving being able to be around my wife all day, and I'm excited to have a kid and you know, kind of watching him grow up, you know, and being on the farm. So I think there's some really cool benefits to it, but it is definitely a lot of work, and you have to wear a lot of hats. You have to be, you know, the farm manager, you have to be the feeder, the processor, the coordinating times with you know, ordering chickens, ordering feed, all that stuff is kind of all on your shoulders. But it's really rewarding when everything kind of works out and you have a fridge full of food and, you know, a lively farm and garden. It can be really, really cool and really special.
And you're doing it your way, you know, like, you know, the animals are being raised humanely and being processed humanely. Being able to have that level of control over your own nutritional intake is really incredible, and it's not for everybody, but I'm glad it feels right for us.
All right, this is our item number 10 that we don't think gets talked about quite enough about homesteading, and that is not being afraid to change. And what I mean by that is, while homesteading, kind of in my mind, we do have some stuff written down, but I do have kind of a running list in my mind of like 1 year, 5 year, 10-year goals for myself, the farm, the different areas of the farm and all that stuff. And I like to use those goals as kind of a beacon or a shining light to work towards. That way it keeps my everyday chores and tasks and projects kind of focused, so that I know that that's where I want to get to. But at the same time, like, you need to not be afraid to change. On the other side of our farm, we've showed it in past videos, we have a bunch of pig paddocks that have worked great for the pigs we have had in there. But upon learning more, doing more research and stuff like that, there's probably another way I want to try to do that. It's not something I'm probably going to get to this summer or maybe even next year, but there is a different like system of moving animals rotationally that I want to try. And, you know, I spent a lot of work on that, but just because you spend a lot of work on it doesn't mean it's necessarily the right way or the right way for your farm. And so just, you know, again, don't be afraid to change. When we started homesteading, was it 5 years ago, I think? It's just me and my wife. We've been together for 17 years now. It's just been the two of us. And this year we found out that my wife is pregnant, and we are going to have a little boy later this year. And we are super excited for it, but we have kind of we have been very comfortable with just it being just the two of us, and now we're gonna have to change a little bit because we're gonna have a new member of the family, and some aspects of the farm might change, some of the ways we have things laid out, how we want to raise animals, what we want to raise. All that's going to kind of adjust as we have a new person added to our family. So there's things like that, you know, the world kind of throws at you and you have to kind of adjust. So I like to have kind of those goals in the future, working towards kind of keeping you at least on like a pretty, you know, dedicated path. But again, don't be afraid to kind of adjust those goals. I will say it can get dangerous if every week you're changing your goals from this to that to this to that. You won't get anything done. So, you know, be mindful of it. But, you know, if you see something at a homesteading conference or a friend's farm or on the internet and you're like, that seems really cool, that seems like it'd really work for us, then try to implement it. And whether you're adjusting the goals or adjusting the process, just, you know, don't be afraid to change.
All right, little bonus tip for everybody. Wardrobe. That's something else I don't think I see a lot of people talk about, but you will definitely end up changing your wardrobe possibly, or having to get some new things. For example, when we first started out, it was a different kind of chicken tractor than the one behind us right now, but I would go out in my regular leggings and a t-shirt and constantly get rips and pulls in my clothing. So investing in some anti-rip clothing, things that are durable. Duluth has great armachillo stuff for the summertime that will help keep you cool. If you live somewhere with an actual winter, like a really good insulated winter coat will help while you're doing the animal chores out there. Do you have anything to add?
Just kind of keep in mind that you might see a quick project to do, you know, a quick 5-minute thing, and you're wearing your nice clothes and you go, I'm just gonna take care of that real quick. Well, those clothes will quickly become your chore clothes, and so just kind of be mindful of, you know, what clothes you're wearing when you do stuff. Pretty much all my pants get pig kisses, we call them, or they touch you with their snout and they'll get mud all over the bottom of it. And so yeah, just you know, making sure you're wearing the right stuff for the job you're doing.
Also hats.
Yes.
I wear way more hats when I'm out doing chores with him now, and bandanas in the summer. They really are useful.
All right, so those were the top 10 things that we think that YouTube homesteaders don't talk enough about. And we also threw in one bonus one in there. So again, hopefully you got something out of this video. We had fun making it, even though it's pretty hot and you can see that I'm soaked. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed, and thank you for watching.
Good night.